Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in.
That's what I want to know.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 144 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Co-founders of FELLR, Andy, Skora and Will Morgan join me today and share a fresh angle on the beverage world. In the highly competitive space that is seltzers, these two are doing incredible work to stand out. Both bring global experience from iconic beverage brands like Red Bull, Jameson and Absolut, and each have spent time working with Pernod Ricard, as the astute listener will recognize with those brands. Through FELLR, they're striving to create something new and different to innovate in the fast-paced seltzer market. So that we can keep the lights on, there's a company I'd like to share with you. It's called Access Collins. They're the only fully integrated end-to-end system on the market for comprehensive booking and event management. No one else does this. Their platform is helping operators increase foot traffic, maximize revenue, tackle no-shows, and save many hours each week through automation. Find out more at bit.ly/hospo sponsor. Hello and welcome to the show, Will and Andy.
Hey mates.
Hey James, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'm really excited to hear about FELLR and what you guys have been doing with the business and starting during a very interesting time during the depths of the lockdown last year. And you've done amazingly in the first year and things have come a long way, distributing to some pretty incredible off-premise brands there as well. So very excited to open the interview today. But as you know, the first question that I like to ask on the program is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. I know you guys have been up the supply chain there, so not directly in the weeds, but in the weeds in another way. Wondering if you have any exceptional experiences to share with regards to, this could be customer service or hospitality directly, but exceptional experiences there. I might start with you, Andy.
A cool experience that I've had with hospitality is going back to 2017 and took a group of New Zealand bar managers out to New Orleans for the Tales of Cocktail. And we're going around all week to all these crazy, extravagant brand parties. They're spending millions of dollars on these parties, and they've got Snoop Dogg playing and circus-themed parties with people flying around doing acrobatics from the rooftop. And in between some of these parties, we really wanted to go out and get some authentic New Orleans fried chicken. So we're all sitting there at this hole-in-the-wall joint, and these locals are sitting right next to us, and they notice the New Zealand accent, not mine, but everyone else's in the group. And they started asking us about New Zealand and why we're out there. And they're telling us, you're not actually going to the right bars. We need to show you what New Orleans is really about. So off we go with these two locals to all their local bars, meeting their friends till the wee hours in the morning. And I guess it shows how important hospitality is, not only to a local community, but how it brings people together from all walks of life. That's always kind of stuck with me. And it's, at the end of the trip, everyone was talking about their best experience on the trip. And that came up as the night that we had.
Thank you for sharing that experience in New Orleans, Andy. I'd like to pass over to Will. Have you got a story, an exceptional hospitality experience? I'd love to hear from you.
A little bit different to Andy's, but I think both of us previously got to work for Pernod Ricard, and part of their portfolio was a lot of the wines down in Barossa. So had a pretty amazing trip down to the Barossa, which was pretty awesome. And there's this amazing guy called Jimmy Keane. He's just the most personable and just most amazing dude. And kind of really took me on this kind of journey through, I guess, the Barossa in terms of, everything from the vineyards to the back of house, production facilities, how they make the wines, how they cultivate the grapes, everything like that, which was just such an amazing experience to be taken through that kind of full brand journey from the growing of the grapes through to the production of the wines and straight to the kind of restaurant actually even. So we kind of went to the St. Hugo restaurant there and kind of him talking us through that kind of whole brand journey and what goes into making such like an amazing kind of product and having that amazing brand story. And I think that's something that's kind of always stuck with me, is getting to the core of the background of a brand story. And I think that's something that always kind of resonates with people as well. And it's something that is really memorable if you kind of have that strong brand story that just comes through your full production cycle. It's something that just, has always really stuck out to me, but it's something you always remember, and it's something that you always tell your friends and you're proud to share. So I think for us at FELLR, it's always something that we've kept in mind, is creating a product and a brand story that people are excited about and proud to share with their friends as well.
It's interesting that you bring up brand story as well. And given that both of you have backgrounds in sales and marketing with quite large or very large global distributors, maybe it's a controversial topic between salespeople. I'm not sure because I've not been in the space, but how do you discern between the fluff and the sales of it and what's actually legitimate when you are dealing with these sorts of brands? And you don't have to give any specific examples on this one, but given that you've worked with a lot of different brands, each of you, I'd love to know how you do that.
Look, I think authenticity is the biggest thing there. I mean, I think people these days could really see through a lot of fluff. If people are doing it not for kind of authentic reasons, or they're just doing it to jump on a bandwagon, I think consumers these days are super smart. They see through that bullshit pretty quickly. So I think for us, it's really been creating a brand that at its core is the brand that we want to live every day. So when me and Andy both started this, we were like, look, what's the brand that we'd be happy to kind of step out of our jobs and live every single day, putting our passions into it and, doing it the right way. So, I mean, we could have raised $10 million. We could have gone down spending that kind of amount of money, bringing on like influencers, everything like that. We wanted to do it the right way that we felt was the most organic and most authentic to us. So I think people resonate with that. And I think when you do things just for an authentic way, I think, it definitely kind of shows through and people catch on to it.
And authenticity's come up a lot over the last, 4 years that we've been running the show, and more of a topic in common discourse around. But Andy, do you have a different answer or something to add on that?
Definitely agree with what Will said. And I think being at our previous roles and seeing how we interacted with the brands in that capacity is so much different than what we do with FELLR. Those brands have an established brand identity. They've got brand guidelines that you have to follow when you market and sell those brands. And it really kind of limits that creativity. And this is a chance for Will and I to step out, take our learnings from the past and some of those really iconic brands that we worked with and take what we liked with that, but then be creative enough to add our twist onto it. And like Will said, do it authentically.
So in leaving those businesses respectively, you did work together with one of them, a very large international distributor, and forging your own path. I'd love to know why you do what you do and whether you have different visions and missions as individuals. I'm sure that you've got a common vision for the company, but whether you have different purposes behind what really gets you up in the morning.
It's funny why we do what we do. It changes at any given time. And I think when we first started this and we're kind of transitioning out of this, but it was really just to prove, for me, myself wanting to do is to prove that we could and go out and take a chance and take a punt and know that we had the ability to create something from scratch and make it something into our own. And from a brand perspective, why we do it is, like Will said, we wanted to create something that was authentic and true to ourselves and people were proud to share, and something that we'd be stoked to wake up every morning and put our heart and souls into.
So what is it that sits behind that? You've said there that proving that you could do it, and then some more really came out after that around putting your hearts and souls into this project, into this business, this company. Why do you want to do that, Andy?
It's just something I think that I've always wanted to do. Working for a large multinational was great. You get a lot of learnings from that and learned heaps, and it was fun. But I think there's always been a desire to go off and do something and own something and create it and be able to put my name to it. And I think it's just something that's always been there, and it's been an itch and a scratch. And I think it was finally time when Will and I sat down and we went, you know what? Screw it. Let's do it. It's no better time. And there's been a lot of challenges and a lot of things that have come up with COVID. And we've both had little beautiful babies come along since we've done this. And it's never a good time to do it. It's just you got to take the leap at some point. And we both had that itch to do it and we just did it.
Will, do you have a similar story behind why you wanted to start this project, having something of your own? And then if you can expand on that into what the vision of the business is and what's really brought you together as the common denominator.
For me personally, I think I started in my career in advertising. So I was in there for about 5 or 6 years and kind of hit a bit of a crossroads where I was offered a job at another really great agency, but then someone else came to me with this startup opportunity for a small rum company called Stolen Rum. And I think it was at that point where I kind of really was like, look, I could go down the safe career move where, I could stay in that for 20 years. I'd be, really fulfilled by it and I could make a career of it. Or I could take a leap, really learn how these great entrepreneurs have come up with this business and made it successful, and in the hopes that one day I could do it myself. That was about 6 years ago. And I think it was from then that, that kind of entrepreneurial flame kind of started burning. With every kind of role I've had since then, it's always been building that kind of experience set to be able to do my own thing. So the amount of not failed ideas, but ideas I've had thrown against the wall and not stick, and just ideas, there's too many to name. And I think it was the right time when both me and Andy kind of sat down and were like, look, this idea could be a goer. And I think it was the right time. I think there was a time in Pernod where I definitely could have stayed in there for a career move because it is a great company and a great culture, but just definitely similar to Andy, just had that kind of itch and saw the opportunity. And just, I think all the preparation I'd done previously in terms of my roles and ideas that I'd had has just made it even more ready to take that jump. And it was at that point where we started chatting that we wanted to start the business. We both jumped out, and then obviously we're like, how are we going to do this? And I think from the outset, we were pretty clear that we wanted to set some kind of pretty rigorous kind of like brand pillars and values for the business. We wanted to create something that first and foremost, people were really, really excited to share with their friends. We wanted something that literally it needs to have that virality of, word of mouth, that people would actually introduce to their friends because they really got behind it and loved it so much. So the two big things there is getting an amazing tasting product, which we worked pretty hard on and spared no expense in terms of the ingredients. And then the other was obviously just creating a really kind of great brand that resonates with people and just allows them to get excited by it, share it with their friends, relate to it was really important as well. So that's where we decided, rather than coming into we knew it was going to be a flooded marketplace. We knew there was going to be a lot of brands, all just copying big American brands, same cans, same colors. We had to stand out, do something different, and create a lifestyle brand more so than say a product. And so that's where kind of FELLR came about, and that Land of Fizz proposition we have, which is, it's born and inspired by Australia, our Land of Fizz.
I'd like to know more about how you, as your background in marketing and advertising then, how you've inspired this response in the people who are absorbing your marketing and your materials and even holding the can, right? How then have you gone about doing that?
I mean, from the outset, it was really just doing things a bit differently. So we knew, obviously, White Claw was setting the world on fire over in the US, and we were one of the first to market with seltzers in Australia. I think we were about 2 or 3, but we knew that there would be hordes coming behind us and that everyone would replicate White Claw with their white slimline can round logo. So for us from the outset, it was like, we need to do something completely different. So we chose a beer can. Obviously, it was something that resonated to both audiences as well. We wanted something that was relatively gender neutral. So for guys holding a small slimline pink gradient can, that might not resonate as much as, say, something that's in a beer style can. So we put a lot of work into the product, so can in hand, because in essence, I mean, if we're starting on a relatively small budget, your product needs to do the heavy lifting. I mean, we don't have the budget to really kind of initially to go mass market with it. So it was, if you've got 200-300 people buying your product and each of those people loves the experience, loves the product and shares that with 3 or 4 friends, then you've instantly then got a snowball effect where you're starting to grow your audience and that type of thing. So creating the awesome product first was the main thing, and then really creating that kind of authentic kind of brand communications off the back of it.
Given that you've both had incredible resources available with larger businesses, what sort of tools have you taken away, philosophies or methods of working and trying to pull out this information from the consumer? And that's the consumer on any level, your client or customer. What sort of methods have you taken away since and then applied in the business together?
It's a good question, because I think at Pernod, you had all the resources in the world to look at data, look at consumer trends, have large departments doing all this stuff for you. And when it's just Will and I, you have to do a lot of things on feel and just trust your instincts on what you think is right. And a lot of it is just getting out and face-to-face communication with consumers and retailers and seeing what's going to work and then applying that as well. So a lot of it is trial and error, but we kind of knew from our past experiences what was working currently in the market and what we wanted to apply to the brand as well.
And Will mentioned there that both of you were some of the first to be marketing seltzers in Australia. So having that sort of advantage of having an understanding of the Australian market and seltzers definitely would have worked in your favor. You talk about your gut feel and trusting your gut feel, and this comes up a lot when you have that lack of available data or resources to acquire that knowledge and build those trends and information forward, and not having those sorts of resources of the larger businesses. How do you know? Because I like to ask this question to a lot of businesses and founders in the same position. How do you know what's right and what's wrong and what you should be listening to and not listening to?
You can look at what the consumers are asking for and what their purchasing habits are. And Will and I, from the beginning, looked at what's happening with this craft revolution in beer, spirits, and wine. And people are looking for more local. They're looking for more artisanal brands. And again, those brands are, again, authentic. They're speaking directly to the consumer and it's bringing out something different. And when we first came out and started talking about seltzers and RTDs, which they're categorized as, a lot of it's mainstream and not very proud to serve. So we were looking at this going, why hasn't anyone really gone past the mainstream RTD and revolutionized it like they're doing with beer, spirits, and wine? And that's why, as Will spoke about earlier, just doing something completely different than the rest of the market. We knew a lot of guys were going to come out and have their brands. It's like a sea of same almost out in the category. Everyone's doing that white can, slimline can, circle logo, and very mainstream look. And we just wanted to kind of flip the RTD category on its head and bring more of a craft approach to it.
How have you ensured that it was touched on with gender neutrality to be inclusive of all genders? How have you gone about doing that, given that you've got the beer can and is it the colours that are trying to be more appealing to a broader demographic, or is there more that you're doing through your branding and business activities to do that?
It's a careful balance. So I think for us, the colours that we use and just that kind of, as we said, using the kind of beer can and the colours as a bit of a kind of offset to kind of talk to both audiences. For both of us, it's been super important to make sure that we're definitely kind of inclusive. Like a lot of our Land of Fizz artists we work with, both male and female, and just kind of everything we do, we want to make sure that there's that even balance. And we knew that this particular product, obviously initially with the low calories and stuff like that, is a trend that's kind of definitely more skewed to females at the moment, but we definitely saw that growing in guys as well. So I think for us, it was just making sure we got the right balance of that in there. And I think we've done relatively well. I think we've kind of been blown away with the different audiences that have really jumped on this kind of seltzer bandwagon. And I think when we're kind of doing it on tap as well in jugs, that's also another one that's really spoken to different audiences as well. You get the kind of tradies coming in after work and hitting the pub and grabbing a jug. It's been great.
Yeah, and it's just taking a look at all the fine details when we were looking at designs, as Will mentioned. We've got those really soft pastel gradients coming through the can, and we knew that maybe we offset that with a squash can instead of a slim line, which is traditionally more feminine. And then our logo is handwritten, and it's the name of it's FELLR, which is more male-led, but then the colors come through as more female. So everything kind of plays off of each other really nice.
Together, what are you learning about or exploring at the moment? So where are you pushing things forward and innovating? You've said that FELLR's different and stands out, but tell me more about how the brand is different and then what you're learning about to build things and innovate.
For us from the outset, as I said, we wanted to build a different brand. So everything that we kind of do comes down to what we call the brand proposition, which is welcome to a land of fizz. So everything that we've done, all our inspirations for the brand have come from Australia. So, sunburnt country. So that's, as we said, the gradients come from sunsets, coastal culture, that type of thing. So everything's been inspired by the land, like our kind of lingual cues and everything like that. And then the fizz, really kind of Australian energy, thirst for life, stoke that we try and inject into our tone of voice and everything like that. So I think for us, that's been something that's quite unique from a beverage perspective, is bringing that lifestyle brand cues into this space. I think previously in RTDs and premixes, it's been very price driven, that type of thing. While I think for us, we are the highest priced seltzer on the market, we are kind of on par with White Claw. And I think that's where having to kind of do the heavy lifting with brand and standing out and doing things a bit differently justifies that price. And that's why, looking at the kind of data over the Christmas period, we've got in the stores that we're in, we've got the fastest moving seltzer in the country. So I think making sure that we are kind of hitting those right kind of points with our branding and marketing helps us stand out and justify that higher price, which has been really important.
To add to that, it's the can and the branding is very important, but it also matters what's in that can as well. And I think that's where we've innovated quite a bit as well. We've actually come up with our own custom brewed method to develop our alcohol base. And what it does is it adds a bit more mouthfeel, a bit more complexity to our liquid. And so when people are trying these different brands, they actually come back and we get a lot of good feedback around the liquid in the can and how different it is and how refreshing it is. The branding is great, but the liquid stands up to the brand as well. And that's really important. And I think innovation it's one of our brand pillars. And we're constantly looking at new flavors, new ranges. Will and I are constantly sitting down, coming up with new ideas. We've got some really exciting stuff coming up in the near future. And we're just looking at what we want to do with this brand. It's a lifestyle brand first and foremost. So what we're able to do with that, because it is that type of brand, is we're able to branch out into different ranges. We can use FELLR across a range of different products in the future.
Fantastic. Will, when you started answering the question as well, a bit about the incredible businesses that you are stocked in, and a lot of it, given that a lot of on-premise is locked down in the country or unfortunately closed down, that the focus, I can imagine, must be on the off-premise now. And you're in BWS and Dan Murphy's and some independent stores as well. For listeners who are trying to navigate that distribution, I'm guessing you both had some existing relationships in that domain, but how do you navigate that space when you're coming into it?
It's a very interesting dynamic of what we've gone through. It's our relationships predominantly were in the on-premise space. In previous roles, I used to look after the on-premise, and we actually planned on launching with kegs and in the on-premise first and doing something completely different, as we knew everyone was going to come out with cans trying to hit the retail. And we wanted to flip this whole thing on its head and build the brand in a very, very authentic way and build it in the on-premise. But then obviously when the first lockdown happened and restrictions hit, we kind of had to move in a different direction and put all the liquid into cans and go into retail. So we didn't have too many relationships in the retail side of things. We just kind of had to learn on the fly. And I think we knew what we had to do with that experience there. But I think it was just us really showing the retailers what the brand's all about and how different it was. And at first we got some knockback on, oh my gosh, you guys are creating a premium seltzer. It's going to be $4 more a 4-pack than any other seltzer. We got pushback for creating more of a lifestyle brand than calling it a seltzer and calling out all the low calories and no sugar. And yeah, we just stuck to what we believed in. And eventually I think the retailers saw all these other brands coming out that were exactly the same. And they said, you know what, to fill out the category, we have to have some differentiation in here. And they came back to us and said, we'd like to further these discussions. And it ended up working out for us.
Do you have some more to elaborate on that one?
Yeah, for sure. Look, you get pretty good at knocking on doors when you kind of initially start. I think it's, as Andy said, we've knocked on a lot of doors. We've had a fair few knockbacks, but I think the main thing would be definitely having a unique product or a unique proposition is hugely important. Not just jumping on a trend because it's working somewhere else, but it's taking your own iteration of what's doing really well, giving them something unique. Because they've probably had about 10 or 20 brands through the door already before you. So I think it's what makes yours unique. And I think that's where we were quite lucky with forging a different path than everyone else, that it did work for us. And then I think it's just staying dedicated. As I said, we've been hitting the pavement, just me and Andy, for the last year and a half. And it's crazy to think that we still have been doing this all through kind of a COVID lockdown, and that we haven't had a proper kind of opportunity to really kind of see the brand perform at a kind of full open market. But I think it's just that dedication. You will get knockbacks, but it's just keep pounding the pavement, keep knocking on doors. Because I do remember, I think in August, when we did knock on a lot of doors and people were just like, seltzers, yeah, nah, they're not going to be a thing. Don't want to hear about it, that type of thing. And then you go back in 3 months later and they're just like, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, look, we'll take on your product now. So, but it's all part of it, and it's what makes it exciting. And it's having that kind of role as well is what's super exciting. It's, you get to do something kind of different kind of every day.
Given that you're both building those relationships as you go, and as you said, you had more contacts in the on premise and off premise is the focus in current times. What are some of the things that you've learned when navigating those sorts of agreements with distributors?
I think it's like what Will said, and I kind of hinted at it before. You kind of have to know where you want to go with the brand and what your brand plan is and stick to it. And if you know that that's the right plan in your mind, then keep going because, again, we got knocked back quite a bit saying our price was too high or our brand wasn't the right fit. And then eventually we just kept persevering and pushing through. And I think if you cave into retailers' suggestions or their demands, then it's very easy to at the beginning, but then you lose control of your brand and it's not what you want at the end of the day. Just staying the course and knowing that having faith in what you're doing is the correct for the business.
Both of you mentioned innovation being core to the business. I'd like to ask a little bit more about that and the process that you go through to develop these ideas. And how do you then look at, with that lack of data and going off this gut feel, how do you approach solving those problems of what the consumer does want and then sitting with the idea and developing that? How do you navigate that process?
I can't remember what podcast I think I heard it from, but for me, that really stuck out is when we were initially looking to start this, we were really kind of working to what we called unfair advantage. So in terms of we knew from the outset that we'd have to sprint with everything. So we'd have to, innovate very quickly. We'd have to come up with ideas very quickly. And with there being so many new products coming into market, it was going to be a complete sprint the whole way. So luckily, obviously, the experience both Andy and I had at Pernod managed to help us set up our experiences, our knowledge of the market, our knowledges of what flavors were trending at the moment, what brands are kind of cutting through and how. So I think having that education from the outset really allowed us to innovate really quickly. So it's having that market knowledge and knowing where to look for the right trends as well. So I think for us, we're about to launch our passion fruit flavor in the next kind of couple of weeks. And we knew that cocktail culture, obviously, flavors they launch in the on-premise first, and then they generally move over to mainstream and retail. So we'd seen a lot of passion fruit coming through in cocktails and that type of thing. So from that, obviously, that kind of lends our methods of how do we come up with a new brand or the new flavor, and then create that pretty quickly. So I think we look at what kind of market trends we can see at the moment without that kind of the big budgets and research tools that the big companies have. And then we kind of get together and put our heads together really quickly. And whether it's a design sprint or whether it's just quick innovation sessions, it's which flavors work well, which brand ideas work well. And then also, to be honest as well, throwing them to our customers too, because again, what might work for us might not necessarily work for some of our biggest customers. So while we always want to obviously innovate first and show that we're pushing forward and doing things differently, we also want to make sure that we're checking in with them and bringing them along on the journey so that they make sure that those flavors and new products work in their kind of ecosystem.
Thanks for elaborating on that one, Will. I'm interested from both of you, who do you look for advice in the business? And people ask about mentors. I'm not specifically looking for a mentor, but people who guide you in those decisions. Given that there are two of you making these decisions, there's more information outside of the two of you. I'm sure you have, incredible experience and insights to draw from, but who are you looking to for advice?
When you start a business, you have to do everything. And you know that you will, but you don't know how much work that's going to be. And you don't know how little you know until you actually do that. So I think Will and I, we're both very open to getting advice and reaching out to people for advice that have an expertise in an area that we don't have. So for finance, we reach out to people that we know have financial backgrounds, sales, and in terms of retailers and other parts of sales that we don't know. We reach out to those people and ask for advice. And you shouldn't really, especially when you're starting a new business, you shouldn't think that you know everything. And asking people for advice is something that's crucial to us. And if we didn't do that, I'm sure that we'd make really bad mistakes on what we were originally going to do and then spoke to someone and changed our mind or got a new idea along the way. So we don't reach out to one person specifically. We've got a network of people that we've become friends with throughout our professional and personal lives. And we just continuously reach out to a range of different people on a range of different topics as well.
Thank you, Andy. Will, I might direct this one back to you. So, what's your biggest challenge in the business right now? What are you guys navigating or grappling with? And challenge doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, it's just something that you're overcoming currently.
We've gone down a direction where we don't want to raise the big bucks initially. We wanted to grow this business authentically and not give away a lot of equity in our business. So I think for us, it's really been managing the business just with two of us initially. I mean, we literally do everything. We're doing the sales, we're hitting the pavement, we do all the marketing, we do all the production planning, the innovation, development, everything like that. So I think the biggest challenge is time management, making sure that we're really hitting our straps and hitting our goals and everything like that. I think it's been a testament to Andy's and both, I guess the work we've done is that we have got as far as we have just with the two of us, because we haven't even had a chance to really kind of stop and take kind of heed of where we've got to. But I think it's just that time management piece and just making sure we're giving everything enough attention to get it rolling. We are expanding the team. We should be tripling the team over the next couple of months, which is really exciting for us. And we've got huge plans, obviously, for this summer where we should be looking at kind of 400% growth on kind of our previous year. So it's a very, very exciting time. But it's just being that jack of all trades is something that it's hard to stay confident on sometimes, whether you're doing everything perfectly. But I think back to Andy's previous point, we are doing everything ourselves, but we do have a really strong network behind us of people who are guiding us and giving us that expertise to help us through those really kind of tough times as well.
Ultimately, then, where do you want the business to be? So, what does success for FELLR look like to you?
Our mission for the brand is we want to be the number one independent hard seltzer in the country. So, like Will said, we do things from a small base. We haven't gone out and raised a bunch of money. So we are a little while off that, but I think we have strong foundations and we've got a really solid plan for the future. And we're really excited to bring that to life and accomplish that goal that we have.
For us, it's just continue building that brand that we've loved to kind of build so far over the last year. And we're having so much fun doing it at the moment. And I think to Andy's point, we definitely see that as an attainable goal. And we're just really excited to really kind of see where this brand can go. Because I think we're now really starting to bring to life the Land of Fizz piece this summer, which is really exciting. And I think once things open up as well, being able to get back to the on-premise, getting back to the events and having people really experience the brand is what really gets me excited about the future and where we can go with things.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the program today, gents. I have one last question for each of you. I'm going to stick with you to answer first for this one, Will, while you're on a roll there. I'd love to know who you'd like to hear on the show.
For me personally, I mean, I'd love to hear how some of the other kind of craft beer company guys have started things out. So, your Stone and Woods as well. I think that's a really kind of interesting brand story and they've built an amazing brand with an amazing culture from the sounds of it. I'd love to hear from those guys, absolutely.
I got a good one for you there, Will. Jamie Cook was back on at episode 50 a long time ago, and we did a remaster of that one after episode 100 too. So a couple for you there already. But Andy, who would you like to hear on the show?
Maybe someone in the hospitality industry owning bars, talking about obviously what's been going on the last year, but it's still a character. Someone like Anton from Swillhouse Group.
Swillhouse has come up before as well, so I'll have to reach out to them again. Thank you very much, Andy and Will, for joining me on the program today to hear about FELLR and your plans for the future and how you've been so successful in the first year of operation. So very excited to stay connected as you grow and hear about that success moving forward. So thank you very much again for joining me on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having us. Great to chat.
No worries. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
This program is hosted by James Henderson. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan and Shim Phelan. Thanks to our distribution team, and a special thanks to you for tuning in every week. This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.